Can you imagine working your whole life, yet still feeling like the dream of owning a home is slipping away? It feels like no matter how much you save, prices always rise faster than your salary. It's a race we seem to have lost before we even started. But what if I told you there's a way out? What if the barrier isn't money, but simply the way we think about construction? Today, we're going to look at something that might completely change your perspective on what a home really is. A man decided he wasn't going to accept the rules of the real estate game anymore. So he started building an entire cabin all by himself, right in his driveway. And the most impressive detail? It's portable. Have you ever thought about building your house in one place and then simply taking it wherever you wanted? Stay with me, because what he does with a pile of wood and some nails is going to leave you questioning why you're still paying rent. Before we dive into the secrets of this build that could change your life, I have a quick invitation. If you believe in financial freedom and building your own dreams, please hit that subscribe button to help the channel. It really helps us grow and allows me to bring more inspiring stories like this to you. Now, let's get back to the build. The first thing you need to understand is that time is the biggest enemy for anyone wanting to build. Many people dream of putting up a cabin in the woods or on a remote piece of land, but honestly, who has the time to travel every weekend and spend days away from family just to build? Almost no one. That's why this builder's idea is genius. He brings the construction into his daily routine. He's building in the garage, in his spare time, right after work. But how is he going to get a whole house out of there later? That's where the magic starts. He isn't building a fixed foundation in the ground. He's creating a giant sled. Look at those thick wooden beams on the ground. Those are the skis of the house. But there's a dangerous secret in the engineering of this sled. If you just leave the beams straight and try to drag the house later, the wood acts like an anchor, digging into the dirt and locking up all movement. To avoid a disaster on transport day, the angle cut on the ends of the beams is essential. It's pure physics. By creating a ramp on the wood itself, you allow the structure to slide onto the trailer and over the ground without resistance. It seems like a small detail, but forgetting this would mean building a house that could never leave its spot. Ever think about how many projects fail, not for a lack of effort, but for a lack of foreseeing the final step right at the beginning? Another critical point most people ignore is leveling the ground. The earth is never perfectly flat. It's full of ups and downs. If you start nailing wood over crooked ground, the whole house grows crooked. 1 inch of error at the base turns into 10 inches of error up at the roof. The invisible work of shimming the beams, placing pieces of wood underneath until the level bubble is perfectly centered, that's what guarantees windows and doors will work in the future. It's a test of patience. Building isn't just sawing and nailing. It is, above all, measuring and adjusting. Would you have the discipline to spend hours just preparing the ground, knowing no one will ever see this work once it's done? When the floor structure starts coming together, a common doubt arises. Will these pieces of wood really hold the weight of a whole life? Furniture, appliances, people walking around? The resistance doesn't come from the thickness of a single piece, but from repetition and correct spacing. When you place joists close to one another, a mesh of strength is created. The weight gets distributed. It's fascinating to see how materials that seem fragile alone become unbreakable when they work together. This changes the way we see security. We don't need concrete walls. We need an intelligent structure that knows how to handle the load.
Raising the walls is the moment the project stops being a drawing on the floor and gains volume. But it's also the moment of greatest physical danger for someone working alone. A solid wood wall weighs a ton. Lifting it against gravity is a battle. If it slips, there's no one there to catch it. That's why using stop blocks on the floor is a vital technique. You create a physical limit for the wall to hit, locking it into the right place. It's like having an invisible helper. Solo construction requires you to be smarter than brute force. You need to use leverage and physics in your favor. Ever feel overwhelmed by a problem that was too big? The solution, in construction and in life, is often to create systems that hold the weight for you. But while the walls go up, a silent enemy watches from the sky: rain. Exposed wood and water are mortal enemies. While the house has no roof, it's just an open box ready to rot. Moisture can swell the floor, warp the boards, and create mold before the house is even ready. The urgency to cover the structure is palpable. Every sunny day is a blessing, and every cloud on the horizon is a threat. Covering everything with tarps is a temporary and frustrating solution, since the wind always tries to rip them off. True safety only comes when the roof trusses are in place and the sheathing is nailed down. It's a race against nature. Could you handle the pressure, knowing the weather could ruin your investment at any moment? The roof isn't just a lid, it's the most complex part of the house's geometry. Every angle needs to be exact. If the cuts on the rafters aren't precise, the roof won't close, water gets in, and the house fails. It's the moment to measure 3-4 times before turning on the saw. Visualizing the final result before it exists is a skill that develops with practice. When you see the roof structure assembled against the sky, the feeling of shelter begins to form. Suddenly, the internal space has a different atmosphere. The sound changes. The light changes. It stops being out there and becomes in here. It's the creation of a personal sanctuary. Once the structure is protected from the rain, the focus turns to the interior. And here enters a decision that defines comfort: thermal insulation. A wooden cabin without insulation is just a shed. In the summer, it's an oven. In the winter, a freezer. Using spray foam or modern materials in the walls creates a barrier against the outside world. It's what allows you to be inside in a t-shirt while it's snowing outside. Often, we save money on what can't be seen, but true luxury is the controlled temperature and silence that insulation provides. Ask yourself, do you value the appearance of things more or the real comfort they offer in daily life? The interior finish with wood in the tongue and groove style brings an aesthetic no drywall can imitate. The smell of the wood, the texture, the knots, and natural grains transform the environment. But working with wood for finishing requires strategy. You need to plan where each board will end so you don't have waste. Cutting wrong here means throwing money in the trash. Besides, wood works. It expands and contracts. If you nail everything too tight, the walls can crack and warp over time. Building with natural materials means accepting that your house is a living organism reacting to the environment. It's an organic beauty that demands respect. The mobility of this cabin brings a fundamental design question: dimensions. You can't simply build it any size you want. You need to think about the width of the roads, the height of bridges, and power lines. It's an exercise in reverse engineering. You design the house to fit into the world, not the other way around. This forces creativity. How do you make a small space look big? How do you fit a kitchen, bathroom, and bedroom into a width that can travel down a highway? The limitations, in fact, liberate you. They force you to eliminate the superfluous and focus only on the essential. Could you live in a space where everything has a purpose and there's no room for accumulated junk? The installation of windows and doors is what seals the house, but their position is strategic. High windows, for example, allow light to enter and maintain privacy, besides freeing up walls for furniture. In compact spaces, every inch of wall is valuable. If you fill the house with glass, where will you put the wardrobe? Where will the shelves go? Intelligent design thinks about daily use, not just the beauty of a photo. It's about creating a flow of life that works. Natural light transforms the small environment, making it seem wider and airier. It's the difference between feeling trapped and feeling welcomed. The porch is an element that adds soul to the building. Even in a portable house, having a transition space between the inside and outside is vital. It's the place for breakfast, for watching the rain fall without getting wet. Structurally, adding this extra weight to the front is a challenge, requiring solid posts and a perfect connection to the main roof,
but the value this adds to the quality of life is immeasurable. A house without a porch is just a shelter. With a porch, it becomes a home. It's an invitation to slow down. In a world that demands speed, building a space dedicated to rest is an act of rebellion. The question of electrical self-sufficiency is the next logical step. Preparing the house to receive solar energy means cutting the umbilical cord with monthly bills. Imagine the freedom of owing nothing to anyone at the end of the month. The cabin was designed to house battery systems and panels. This isn't just about saving money, it's about security. If the city grid fails, your house keeps running. If there's a crisis, you have light and power. Building with autonomy in mind is preparing for an uncertain future with the peace of mind of someone who holds control in their own hands. The finishing process requires patience. Sanding corners, rounding sharp edges, treating the wood so it lasts for generations. Transforming rough construction boards into surfaces smooth to the touch is what differentiates the professional from the amateur. A simple detail, like running a planer on the edge of a beam, completely changes the visual perception, making it look like the house was made with solid logs. These are visual tricks adding value and beauty without costing a lot. The craftsmanship is in the details no one asked for, but everyone notices. Looking at the internal space, the division of rooms needs to be surgical. A functional bedroom, a bathroom that fits everything necessary, and an integrated common area. The absence of hallways is intentional. Hallways are dead spaces in small houses. Here, every step you take takes you to a new function. The kitchen blends with the living room, creating a space for togetherness. It's a lifestyle that brings people closer. You don't isolate yourself in different wings of the house. You coexist. For some, this might seem tight. For others, it's the end of domestic loneliness.
And what about the cost? Building this way, buying materials little by little, using leftovers, negotiating wood with small defects, drops the price drastically. The final value of a cabin like this is a fraction of what you pay for a down payment on a bank mortgage. And in the end, you have the asset. There are no compound interests working against you. Every hour of sweat invested is accumulated capital. It's the purest form of converting work into wealth. Why does society push us into 30-year debts when the solution can be built in a few months of dedication? The skill acquired during the process is another invisible treasure. The man who builds his own house learns about plumbing, electrical, structure, insulation, and carpentry. You stop being a hostage to service providers. If something breaks, you know how to fix it because you were the one who installed it. This self-confidence spills over into other areas of life. Knowing your hands are capable of creating shelter gives you a psychological security no corporate job offers. You literally become the master of your domain. There's also the flexibility of use. Maybe today this cabin is your main home to save money. Tomorrow, when you buy a bigger piece of land and build a large house, this cabin becomes an office, a studio, or a guest house. Or you sell it. Since it's portable, the market for it is vast. You can sell it to someone in another city. It's a liquid asset, unlike a masonry house tied to the fate of the neighborhood. You created wealth that can move with you or be turned into cash when needed. The final aesthetic, with the wood protected and varnished, tells a story. It isn't a white, sterile apartment wall. The marks on the wood, the color variations, all of this brings personality. It's an environment that ages well. While drywall deteriorates and stains, wood gains character over time. Living surrounded by natural materials has a proven calming effect. It's bringing a piece of the forest to protect your sleep. In a world of plastic and concrete, returning to the natural is an affordable luxury. Many look at a project like this and think, I could never do that. But construction is a sequence of simple steps. No one builds a house all at once. You nail one board, then another, then another. The secret isn't having superpowers. It's having persistence. It's showing up every day, even when tired, and putting one more piece in place. The mountain moves by spoonfuls. If you can measure and cut, you can build. Fear is just a lack of familiarity with the tools.
Once you start, the mystery disappears and gives way to logic. Imagine the future this construction allows. With no rent to pay, how much money would be left in your pocket every month? What would you do with that freedom? Would you travel more? Work less? Start that business you always dreamed of? The debt-free home is the key opening all these doors. It's not just about having a place to sleep, it's about having the freedom to choose how to live. The cabin is the vehicle for this financial freedom. It's a temporary sacrifice of time and energy for a permanent gain of autonomy. In the end, looking at the finished structure is looking at a mirror of what we're capable of. It isn't just stacked wood, it's physical proof that we can solve our own housing problems. It's the materialization of independence. And if one day the neighborhood gets bad or the job moves to another city, the house goes with you. The roots aren't in the ground, they're in the structure. This is living without ties. This construction journey teaches us that the concept of home is flexible. It doesn't need to be big, it doesn't need to be expensive, and it doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be yours. It needs to be safe. It needs to be made with intention. While the world keeps running in the rat race, paying abusive interest and living in spaces they don't love, the one who builds their own path sleeps peacefully under the roof they raised. And you? What's stopping you from picking up the hammer and starting to build, not just a cabin, but your own freedom? The wood is out there, waiting. Time will pass anyway. The only question is whether a year from now you'll have excuses or keys in your hand.